My name is Caleb Warner, and the day I died was July 12, 2017. I still struggle to say that out loud, but it's the truth. That morning, I was just a regular kid, living in River Grove, Oregon, with my mom, Marissa Warner. We didn't have much planned that day, just a trip to Horizon Lake Water Park, one of my favorite places. The sky was overcast, and my mom almost canceled, but I begged her to let me go. I told her, I just need one good day. She looked at me and smiled, probably thinking I just wanted to relax after a stressful week at school. But something in me knew it was more than that. I couldn't explain it then, but I felt like the day had already been written. When we pulled up to the park, I felt something strange, like the air itself was waiting. I didn't run toward the slides like I normally would. I just stood there, staring at the biggest one in the park, the one they called the Surge. I pointed and said, "That's the one." My mom laughed and said, "It's just a slide, Caleb." But I shook my head. "No," I told her, "not today. It's something more." I remember the way her face changed. She didn't understand, but she could tell I wasn't joking. Then I turned and walked straight toward the stairs, heart calm, step steady. I wasn't scared, but I wasn't excited either. It felt like I was walking into something sacred, something final. The next few moments happened so fast I can barely hold onto them, but they're burned into my memory. I hit the water, and something was wrong. I felt a pull, not like a wave or a current, but like hands grabbing at my legs. I couldn't fight it. I didn't even try. I remember sinking deeper and deeper, and everything around me started to fade. The noise disappeared. The light dimmed. And then, nothing. The world just stopped. No pain. No panic. Just stillness. They told my mom I was under for 9 minutes. No pulse. No breath. My skin had turned pale and cold. They worked on me nonstop. And then, suddenly, I came back. I shot upright, gasping for air, shouting something I barely remember saying. "Where is he?" "It's starting. The gate is already opening." When I came back, I wasn't the same. I didn't feel like myself, and I could barely speak at first. My mom was crying, holding me, but all I could do was look around like I had just landed somewhere unfamiliar. What I had seen, what I had felt, was more real than anything I had ever experienced. It's hard to describe, but I'll try. The moment I blacked out in the water, I felt myself being pulled, not just out of the pool, but out of my body. It was like time peeled away from me. The noise of the world vanished, and I was floating, not upward, not downward, just away. Away from everything I had ever known. And then I saw it. A tunnel, not dark like people say, but made of something clear and glowing, like glass mixed with light. Inside that tunnel, everything felt alive. I wasn't breathing anymore, but I didn't need to. I wasn't seeing with my eyes. I could feel colors. I could hear silence. I could understand things I had never been taught. The air around me didn't just exist, it carried a presence, like the whole place was waiting to show me something. And then I saw him. At first, I didn't know who it was. A tall figure, glowing brighter than the tunnel itself. Not blinding, but comforting. Like light had a shape. I didn't hear his voice, but I knew what he was saying. Every word filled my chest without a sound. I called him the Light Man when I first told my mom because I didn't want people to think I was crazy. But deep down, I knew. I knew without question, it was Jesus. He looked at me, and I felt everything at once. Every good thing I'd ever done, every mistake, every doubt, every hidden part of me I didn't even understand. And yet, I wasn't judged. I wasn't shamed. I was known. Fully, deeply, lovingly known. He didn't ask me why I had messed up or tell me I had to prove myself. He simply showed me who I really was. And when I felt like I couldn't take any more, he reached out his hand and said, "You're seeing behind what's real. Don't be afraid." The moment he said that, I felt something shift in me. Like my whole life had been waiting for this moment of truth. Not just about heaven, but about why I was born. I realized I hadn't just died, I had crossed over. After that moment, everything around us changed. The tunnel faded, and suddenly we were somewhere else, like we'd stepped through time itself. I was still with Jesus, but now we were standing in what looked like a massive open space, full of light but with no sun. It wasn't like anything I'd ever seen on Earth. There was no ceiling, no floor, just layers. Each layer felt like it held memories, sounds, and emotions, almost like invisible fabric woven together. I passed through them without walking. Some layers smelled like flowers I'd never smelled before. One felt like laughter. Another vibrated with music that wasn't being sung but could be felt. Jesus was with me, not next to me, but somehow inside me, like his presence filled every part of who I was. And as we moved, I started to feel things I couldn't explain, things that didn't even belong to me. That's when he showed me something I'll never forget. All around us were threads of light, stretching through the air like glowing cords. Some were strong and bright. Others were dim or broken. Jesus looked at them and said, "These are prayers, Caleb." I didn't understand at first. I thought prayers were just words. But he told me they were alive. Each one carried a heartbeat. Some had been spoken in desperation. Some were whispered in silence. And some had died before they ever reached heaven, not because God didn't care, but because the people who prayed them gave up. That broke me. I felt their sorrow. I saw prayers from people who had cried out just once and never spoke again. But Jesus didn't ignore them. He remembered every one. Then he pointed to one stream of light and said, "That one was your mom's." And I saw it, the night she cried herself to sleep, asking God why he was silent. I had no idea she had ever prayed like that. But Jesus reached into that broken prayer and brought it back to life. He said, "Nothing is lost to me." Then he took me to a place I still don't have words for. It looked like a field, but the sky above it moved like water, and the ground felt like it could breathe. Floating above the field were stones, glowing, humming. Each one carried a name. "These are people," Jesus said, "people who almost made it. People who stopped believing at the edge." I cried when I heard that. So many of them were so close. But instead of judgment, Jesus touched one of the stones and it burst into music, like a voice being restored. He said, "Even the ones who stop, I don't forget them." The whole place was full of love, but also a quiet warning. If we stop too soon, we miss what was already waiting for us. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't there to stay. I was there to see, and to bring it back. From there, we moved again, without walking, without even deciding to move. It was like everything responded to Jesus. The place we arrived at next was unlike anything I'd ever imagined. It was a garden, but not like one on Earth. Everything was alive in a way that made you feel like it knew you were there. The trees swayed, not from wind, but from awareness. The flowers gave off a hum, not a sound, but a feeling. Even the dirt beneath my feet had warmth, like it had a heartbeat. In the center of the garden was a pond that didn't reflect your face, it reflected your soul. I walked to the edge and looked down. What I saw wasn't my body. I saw moments I had buried, times I felt small, scared, unseen. And as soon as I saw them, the garden wrapped around me like a blanket. Not physically, but spiritually. I felt it, the love of a place that didn't need words to heal you. Jesus sat beside me at that pond. He didn't speak for a while, and neither did I. Then he said something I'll never forget. "This is where I bring the ones who are too tired to carry their pain anymore." He told me that healing doesn't always come from miracles or loud prayers. Sometimes it comes in stillness, in surrender. He said most people never find this place because they're too busy, too afraid to slow down, or too convinced they have to be strong all the time. But here, the only strength needed was letting go. I asked him why some people never get to feel this peace. He looked at me with eyes that held the whole world and said, because they won't stop long enough to let me bring them here. That broke something in me. I had always thought God was far away. But now I knew he'd been waiting the whole time. Then, as if a new chapter opened, Jesus stood and reached out his hand again. We rose together, not into the sky, but into something I can only call time. I saw Earth again, but not like a globe. It was more like a living heart, beating with people's choices. Jesus showed me cities glowing with prayer. Families protected by quiet faith. Kids singing to God in their bedrooms when no one else knew. But then, he showed me places where the light was fading. Not because of evil, but because of distraction. Places where people were too focused on success, comfort, noise. I saw pastors who had once heard his voice but now only chased applause. I saw churches where the spirit had been replaced by spectacle. Jesus said, the enemy doesn't always destroy. Sometimes he distracts. I asked him what would happen to those places, those people who used to burn with faith but had grown cold. His face turned serious, and for a moment, the silence felt heavier than anything I had felt up to that point. Then he pointed to tiny sparks, scattered like stars across the darkness. These are my sent ones, he said. Some are children, some are elders. Most are hidden in plain sight. But they carry fire. I looked closer and realized some of those sparks were kids, just like me. Teenagers praying alone, even when no one understood them. Kids waking up in the night with tears in their eyes and not knowing why. These were the ones holding the line. I asked him, what happens if they stop? And that's when I saw it, everything started to dim. Slowly, quietly. Like a light being turned down, one soul at a time. Jesus looked away for just a second. That's all it took. The map began shrinking. The light started to flicker in more places than I could count. He said softly, if they stop burning, the final veil will begin to fall. I didn't fully understand what that meant, but I could feel it in my bones. Time was short. Not in fear, but in urgency. We weren't waiting for the end, we were holding it back with our worship, our obedience, our prayers. That's when it hit me. I wasn't sent back just to tell a story. I was being given an assignment. Jesus turned to me and said, now go. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a calling. I didn't want to leave. The peace I felt there, I've never felt anything like it before or since. But I knew I had to. There were people waiting. People who needed to hear this. When I woke up in the hospital, I couldn't speak for 3 days. I just laid there, staring out the window, watching the wind move the trees. My mom sat by my side the whole time, praying over me. When I finally found my voice, the first thing I said was, "It's already moving." She looked at me, confused. I didn't explain it all right away, but slowly I started sharing everything Jesus had shown me. At first, I thought no one would believe me. But the more I spoke, the more people began to cry. Some told me they had been having dreams, too. Others said they'd felt something changing in the air but couldn't explain it. And that's when I realized I wasn't the only one. There are others out there, others who've seen, others who've heard, others who are carrying the fire. I began noticing things I hadn't before. When I'd walk into a room, I could feel the atmosphere, like I could sense who was hurting, who felt unseen, who was ready to give up. It wasn't like hearing voices, it was more like a knowing deep inside, like Jesus had left a part of himself in me. I didn't want attention. I didn't want people thinking I was special. Because I'm not. I'm just a match, one spark in what I believe is a wildfire God is lighting in my generation. But the more time I spent praying, reading the Bible, just sitting in silence, the clearer everything became. When I got caught up in too much noise, phones, games, social media, the light would dim. I could feel it leave. That's when I realized this isn't just about telling people what happened. It's about helping them hear what's already calling out to them. One night, after a small youth event, I told a group of kids, some of us weren't called to live long. We were called to live loud. Not loud with volume, but with truth. With purpose. With fire. I think that's what Jesus showed me, that there are people out there right now, watching this, who feel different. You don't fit in. You cry when no one else does. You feel things too deeply. You dream about things that don't make sense. That's not a curse. That's a signal. You're not broken. You're born for this. God is calling a generation that will speak when others stay silent, that will walk in purity when the world chooses compromise, that will burn with love even when it costs them everything. If you've listened this far, then maybe you're one of them. Maybe you felt God stirring something in you but weren't sure if it was real. This is your confirmation. He's speaking. He's calling. And He's waiting for you to answer. Don't wait until it's convenient. Don't wait until you feel ready. Because the truth is, He doesn't call the ready. He calls the willing. So open your heart. Speak truth. Love boldly. Pray like heaven is listening, because it is. If this story spoke to something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video. Subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment telling us what part of the message stirred something in you. You never know who else might need to hear what you've been holding on to. This isn't just a story. This is a wake-up call. And it's only the beginning.